So it's been a few weeks now since Ben Stelter passed away, and it definitely feels like it's a lot easier to talk about now, than it was when it first happened. The day that it happened, I was as much devastated as any other Oilers fan anywhere. I mean, I when I recorded the segment that I recorded, it was the same day. It was kind of a bit of a an emergency, um, just to try to get the word out about a way that we could fundraise for children's hospitals, and I I have heard that there were people that actually did make a point of going out that day and and having a blizzard and helping that fundraiser specifically for Ben. And I think that if even one person did it, I look at that as a win for this fandom. But looking back on Ben Stelter's passing, I couldn't help but be drawn almost immediately after, at least in the days afterwards, to the words of Stephen A. Smith. And so anybody who's not familiar with Stephen A. Smith was a ESPN broadcaster who also passed away from cancer, and he passed away from it after a pretty long battle with it. And like anybody who has had that disease, he had his up days and he had his down days, and in the end, he did die of the cancer. But before he did, he received an award at the ESPYs. And I spent a lot of time listening to his acceptance speech and re-listening to it, because to me it was the thing that puts the life of Ben Stelter in perspective for me more than anything else. And so in this speech he said, "When you die, it does not mean that you lose to cancer. You beat cancer by how you live, why you live, and the manner in which you live." And then in turn, I think about that tweet that Mike Stelter posted when he was telling the world that his son had passed away, which I can't imagine how hard that must have been. But in particular, when he talks about how hard it was, I should say, pardon me, when he talks about how hard Ben Stelter fought that brutal disease, for the sake of his two sisters. To be suffering from a disease like that, and to fight it, not just for the chance to have the rest of your life, but also to be strong, for your two sisters. And honestly, I realize now, and I'm not even sure how much older or younger his sisters are, but in any event, an extremely difficult thing for them, undeniably. But to fight that disease is much to be strong for them and be of comfort to them. As for the sake of, having the rest of your life to live, that's a hell of a why to live. That's a hell of a manner in which to live. And I think that it very much bears to say, it has to be said, is that Ben Stelter is undefeated. And maybe there is a lot to be said for, the kind of life that he might have had he beaten this disease. And it's hard to deny any of that, but even despite that, to look at the way that he lived the life that he did have. He might not have survived this disease, but he didn't lose to it either. And as we as Oilers fans look back on his life, that is the reason why I think that we should, that's what we should take our inspiration from. It's easy to be sad for the life that he didn't have. I think it would also be very tempting to be sad about the life that he did have and this horrible thing that he had to cope with, during that short time. Something that if any child his age has to fight that battle, that is one too many. But above any of that, I think that what we have to keep in mind, that even if we're sad, that's what his life was like, Ben Stelter wasn't. Ben Stelter didn't let that thing take the joy out of his life. And we shouldn't let it take the joy and the comfort out of our remembrance of his life. In fact, that's what we should take our inspiration from. And whatever in your life you might be struggling with or fighting with, whatever it might be, we should fight it just exactly the way that Ben Stelter did. In fact, I'm going to borrow a page out of Dax Harwood's book and say, whatever it is in your life that you might be struggling with or fighting with, fight like a 5-year-old boy. For Ben.